friends, Krista here. Thank you so much for stopping by Books and Jams. I'm so thankful that you are here. Today, we are going to talk about all of the nonfiction books that I read in 2021. I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my most favorite. I did read 21 nonfiction books throughout the course of 2021, and I am not someone who reads a lot of nonfiction. It's a relatively small percentage of my 200 books that I read in the course of the year, but I have read some really, really good nonfiction. And since I'm not somebody who talks about nonfiction a lot, I thought it would be fun to talk about all the ones that I read this year and what I liked about them or didn't like about them. So others of you who may be kind of nonfiction hesitant, as I am, might find a book or two off of this list to pick up and try to read for yourself. So I do not have copies of all of these here. Actually, most of them I don't have copies of. I have about 5 here. Some because I couldn't find them. My library is currently in a state of disarray. Some I couldn't find. Some I do not own anymore because I unhauled them. And a lot of them I just borrowed from the library. And so I just never owned them in the first place. But let's talk about the 21 nonfiction that I read in 2021 and how I thought about them. Hey, that's perfect. 21 and 21. All right, at the 21 spot. And one of the very few books that I gave 2 stars to is called Bring Your Baggage and Don't Pack Light, a collection of essays by Helen Ellis. I only read this because it was one of my books recommended by one of my patrons. Every month I give some of my patrons a chance to recommend a book for me. I put them in a jar and I pull it out. This is one that I pulled out. I listened to this on audio and I found it super annoying. I just did not connect with the author at all. I found her to be a little bit over the top and extreme in a lot of her responses and reactions, and the way she was talking about things. I did not like the language. I found it a little bit crude at times. It just didn't connect with me at all. I think other people would probably say that it was really funny and relatable. It was not relatable to me, and I did not find it funny. And it just wasn't the right book for me. So I gave it 2 stars. It's the bottom of my list. For number 20, I have Everybody Always by Bob Goff. I was hoping to like this one a lot more than I did. I have read Love Does by him and I appreciated Love Does. And then I heard Bob Goff speak one time a number of years ago. He's pretty eclectic in his train of thought. And that is portrayed in his books. That's the one thing that I would say is really good. As I'm reading it, I hear his voice and it does match up with his actual voice. I've heard him before, so it matches who I saw him to be in that. I mean, I don't know him. I don't know him personally, but his writing style matches up with his speaking style. I can say that. However, he has had some incredibly extreme circumstances happen to him, and again, I just did not find this relatable to my life. I found it to be a little bit privileged, and I understood his point that everybody is deserving of love and we should give everybody love always. And I understand that, but the way that it was expressed in this book just did not connect with me. And while it may have started out good, by the end, I was just ready to be done with it. Number 19 is I Will Judge You by Your Bookcase by Grant Snyder. This is kind of, I guess, a graphic nonfiction. There was no story or plot line, nothing propelling it forward. Each page was a separate cartoon of bookish things. A lot of them were geared towards writers. It did feel a little bit repetitive by the end. I just found it forgettable. It wasn't overly cute or memorable, so it's down here near the bottom of my list. Sadly, number 18 is Remember by Lisa Genova. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I think in that first quarter of the year. I love Lisa Genova's fiction books. And because she's a neuroscientist, I was really hoping to love this book about memory. However, it fell very flat for me. I was hoping for a lot more practicality to it. It was a lot of science of how the brain works, which was interesting, but I found myself bored more often than not, so it's down here near the bottom. Number 17 is Bread and Wine by Shauna Niequist, which I thought was a lovely book. It is a lot about hospitality and opening your table in your home to other people and how to make that special and what not to get focused on. And there's a lot of recipes throughout. But I read this early on in 2021 when we were still very much in the don't have people over to your home phase of life. I feel like if I had read this at a different time, other than the last 2 years, it might be up higher on my list. I like a lot of the things that she had to say. I did not find that I would keep or use any of the recipes as I was going through it. Nothing stood out to me. So I unhauled it, and it's down here near the bottom. Number 16 is Smile by Raina Telgemeier. I thought this was cute, but not memorable to me. It was about having braces, so I connected with it because I had braces growing up as well. So it's a graphic memoir, middle grade graphic memoir. It wasn't great. It was just okay for me. Now we're getting to ones that I did really enjoy. I would say those bottom 5 were like not that great in my mind, but as we move up into number 15 and above, I did really enjoy these. So it was getting a little bit harder to rank them, and I kind of just went with my gut. If you were to ask me on a different day, the ranking of these might fall out in different places. But we have at number 15, At Home in the World by Tish Oxenreider. This is one that I did listen to as well. It's about this family backpacking for 9 months around the world, and the struggle of Tish, the author, of being a homebody, but also having this wandering spirit. I thought it was beautifully written, maybe too beautifully written. I think sometimes I wanted her to just get to the point and not say it in such a beautiful, poetic way. But if you are somebody who likes a little bit more flowery, beautiful writing, vocabulary that you may not always recognize, this one might be for you. I did like the traveling and the stories that she had from different parts of the world. I thought were really good. Traveling with kids and how they got through certain situations, I thought was great. I really did enjoy it overall. It was just a little too flowery for me. Next is one that I actually am keeping, New York in Bloom, number 14. This is by Georgiana Lane, and I have been in New York City so many times, and I just had fun looking through and reading about flowers in New York City, whether it's in buildings and in architecture or in parks or flower shops. It's divided up into some different categories, but it just was a lovely way to visit New York through this like picture essay collection type of book. It just was really nice. I really liked it. So that is at the 14 spot. Number 13 is another middle grade called On the Horizon by Lois Lowry. And I think this was poetry, which I don't always love, but this book talked about the bombing at Pearl Harbor and Hiroshima. And the way that these two things are connected in this story was surprising and beautiful. I did really like this one a lot. And the pictures were pretty cool as well. And the connection is what stands out to me. I don't remember much more about it, but I remember being surprised, delighted by the connection that was made between the character and these two bombings. So it's kind of seen through a child's eyes in both situations. Yeah. Was really good. Number 12 is The Faithful Spy by John Hendricks, which is a graphic biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was involved in a resistance movement whose goal was to assassinate Hitler during World War II. I learned a lot reading this book. I learned a lot about Hitler and his rise to power and how that happened. I learned a lot about the economic situation of Germany following World War I and leading us into World War II. And then also about Dietrich Bonhoeffer and his life. That it was a little bit slow at a couple parts, but because of the graphics and the color and the font, it just gave it a lot more interest for me, and I really enjoyed that one. Number 11 is a little teeny tiny book called 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff. This is a collection of letters between Helene and a British bookshop, I think London bookshop, where they find rare and old books. And she writes to them requesting different books that she's on the hunt for. And it's this pen pal situation for decades that she has with this bookshop. And you kind of get to know different people in the bookshop throughout the years, a little bit through these letters. You see the drastic difference between a deportment or mannerisms between Helene and her casual US way of writing a letter and the more formal British way, which was really fun. It was a really cool read, a nonfiction book for book lovers for sure. Number 10 was a memoir, From Scratch by Tembi Locke. I really enjoyed this memoir. This is one that I did with my patrons for our Patreon book club. Tempe Locke is an actress, and it just tells about her and her marriage to her Sicilian husband and trips to Sicily, and cooking and food is a big part of it. But the thing that stands out to me, which I feel like I've talked about before, there is a death scene very early on in the story that is one of the most beautifully written, very moving scenes of death that I think I've ever read. I just found it to be very profound and beautiful. It was just stunning, which is not very typical. Sometimes the actual moment of death is glossed over, or you get it a lot leading up to it, and then afterwards, and you did get a lot of afterwards in here as well, and grief and how life happens after drastic death like that. But that moment of passing from one life was just so beautifully written. It just stands out to me. So I really loved that. But I also loved the food and the family element and Sicily, and it just was really, really good. From Scratch by Tempe Locke. Number 9 is another middle grade graphic memoir called When Stars Are Scattered by Victoria, illustrated by Victoria Jameson, and she co-authored it with Omar Mohammed, whose story it is. And Omar had to flee into a refugee camp in Kenya with his little brother. And so we learn about their story and what happened to them, how they left their home and why. And they live there together without their parents, and they're very young, and there's a big emphasis on education and the difficulties of that. And his little brother, Omar's little brother, has some mental difficulties. And so there's that aspect of it. He feels very responsible. It just was very interesting glimpse into life at a refugee camp. Interesting to see the difference between males and females, and how some parents encouraged their daughters in their education and other parents would not allow their daughters to be educated. I just thought it really was a wonderfully done graphic memoir for middle graders to see a part of the world or a part of life that they may never have to experience on their own, in a way that really, like, I just loved Omar and his brother. I loved the neighbor next door that helped take care of them. I loved some of the humanitarian workers and the teachers that were involved. Like, it just was really interesting and very heartwarming as well. And at the end, there's like actual photographs of Omar and his brother and some of these people that you got to read about in the graphic novel memoir. So yeah, that one was really good. I would highly recommend that one. Number 8, I also own, and it's The Red Bandana by Tom Rinaldi. Oh, this is the start of 3 9/11 books that are on this list, and this is number 8. I was on a 9/11 kick this year. This is one of my Christmas book exchange gifts. Lindsay gave this to me. It's so good. In this book, we learn about the life of Wells Crowther, who was a firefighter during 9/11. So we kind of learn about his life leading up to the point of becoming a firefighter, and his actions during that day, and people who remember this man who had a red bandana. And then even afterwards, the legacy that his life left, how Obama even spoke about him in one of the memorial services about 9/11. This young man was so spectacular. He was just kind of an ordinary guy, but the choices that he made in this moment of tragedy, it's making me cry right now. It's inspiring, and it was so well written. Yeah, so good. So good. Number 7 is The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer. I read this with a number of you joining in with me for some Christian nonfiction live chats and a read along. We did 2 books, and both are in my top 7. So at number 7 is The Pursuit of God. In this one, it just is a classic Christian nonfiction about pursuing God and why that's important, and the desire. It kind of re-sparked in me a desire to be more intentional in my own personal pursuit of God and how God pursues us anyway and loves us. It's just so good. Yeah, it's very good. The language in this one was a little bit, took me some brain adjusting to get into it, but once I was into it, I could understand it a lot more. My book had really wide margins. I don't know where it is right now, but I had really wide margins, so I was able to take notes and kind of summarize things and underline things, and that helped me to stay very focused when I was reading, and that was necessary. Number 6 is another memoir, Warriors Don't Cry by Melba Patillo Beals. Melba is one of the Little Rock 9. She's one of the 9 Black students who went to school at Central High School in Little Rock, Alabama, when the Supreme Court made the decision that segregation should no longer be a thing in education, in schools. The governor of Alabama and others chose to ignore that and made it very, very difficult for these 9 students over the course of a year. It was harrowing to read. It was infuriating to read. It was also inspiring, just this young woman and these 9 young people facing such horrors every single day. I mean, physical abuse, verbal abuse, things being thrown at them, attempts on their life every single school day. I can't imagine. It's fabulous. It's a fabulous read, and it's right from her, right from one of these students who experienced it. How she was able to continue to go to school every day and then live life afterwards and carry on. And oh, she's just amazing. Read it. Warriors Don't Cry. So good. Number 5 is my second 9/11 book. It's The Day the World Came to Town by, I forget who. Here's the book. But it's about this town, Gander, Newfoundland in Canada, that had a big airport. And so on 9/11, all of the US airspace shut down completely. Get the planes out of the sky, which is amazing in itself. The air traffic control team who was able to do that. A lot of planes had to land at their nearest available airport. And because Gander, Newfoundland, it's like on the east coast of Canada, and it had a big airstrip, and I'm not exactly sure why. I know it does explain it in the book, but I don't remember. That's not what I was focused on. Anyways, a lot of planes landed there, and this little town, it's not very big. Its population tripled, quadrupled when these planes landed there. And the people of this town opened their homes, their arms, their laundry, their washing machines, their kitchens. They opened their hearts to all of these people on these planes to give them a place to stay, tried to make them as comfortable as possible. They befriended them. They comforted them. They washed towels and sheets for them. Like, this town just was amazing. I'm so excited to say that I have booked a ticket already to see the musical Come From Away, which is based on this event. And it's a very short one. It's coming here to Richmond in February, and my friend and I bought tickets, and I'm so excited. I've heard that it's very good. I know I can watch it on Disney Plus. I don't want to. I want to wait and see it live in the theater. Oh, I'm so excited. So yeah, that's number 5. It was very heartwarming. Hard as well. I mean, anything dealing with 9/11 is going to bring up a lot of emotions. I have a lot of personal memories from that day. Then to just see, so like in the midst of these other 2 books, which were so much harder to read in that we're right there at the Twin Towers and experiencing some of that stuff through the eyes and words of other people. But this one was just like, not in New York City, but how this town, just really embraced all these people. It was beautiful. It was so good. Then I have another memoir, the last memoir on this list, The Sound of Gravel by Ruth Werner. I read this very, very early in the year, maybe even January. But this follows Ruth and her family, a polygamist sect of Mormonism. They lived in northern Mexico. She is a sister with a lot of siblings, and we just learn about her family life and abuse and poverty. And I just really loved the family love in here. The sister and the brothers, like the way that they looked out for each other really stands out to me. I just remember absolutely loving this. It was a 5-star read for me early on in the year. Heartbreaking, all the different things, and very difficult to read some of the different things that they had to go through. But it stands out as being a really good read. Number 2 is the other group read that we did for a Christian nonfiction read along, and that's Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. This happened in May, Mere Christianity May. There will be another one coming in February. I will be announcing it sometime next week, maybe, or the week after. It's coming. Not another C.S. Lewis, but this one was so good. This was a reread for me. It's not the first time I've read this book, but I loved it so much, especially just the conversation that we had. It was really cool because we don't all come from the same church or the same denomination, but we were able to talk about our faith and the basics of what Christianity is, regardless of your denomination, because of the way that C.S. Lewis writes this. And I love that C.S. Lewis was an atheist at one point, and then he studied Christianity and the Bible, and he was like, wait, I can't be an atheist, like God is real. And he kind of walks you through all of that to a degree in here. What I love so much is also that C.S. Lewis is not a theologian. So I felt like he had a lot of analogies and metaphors, and just his way of speaking was a little bit snarky at times and very relatable. Again, I had to kind of like think about it because he's incredibly brilliant. So sometimes I had to be like, what is he saying here? I don't really understand all of it, but it's fabulous. It's one that I will read again and again in my life, I think. It just was so good. And the number one nonfiction book that I read in 2021 is my third 9/11 book, The Only Plane in the Sky, an oral history of 9/11, edited and pulled together, not edited, but put together by Garrett M. Graff. I am so thankful that I finally read this book. This I listened to on audio because it is an oral history. And so you get all those different voices on audio, but it's a good one to read along because in the text, there are also some photos, you can kind of see like there's different people, and it starts out, the structure of the book is that it starts out at the evening of September 10th. And you, in this book, talk about not just the firefighters and what happened in the Twin Towers, but you hear from different people who work there. You also hear from air traffic controllers and Air Force One and the Coast Guard who rescued a ton of people. Like, I just learned so much more. I have a much more broad view of what happened on 9/11 because of this book. It is not a zeroed in Twin Towers only. Like, you kind of got a broader view of what was going on around the country to a degree, and the Pentagon. I learned a lot about the Pentagon. I mean, I know that happened on the same day, but I was not as familiar. And Flight 93 in Pennsylvania, like, he takes us through the whole thing. It was very interesting, very heartbreaking, but so well done. So well done. And I would definitely recommend the audio and the book together. So maybe like get the book from the library and listen to the audiobook, or buy the book because it's a treasure. And it's a piece of our history that like forever will be part of American history, obviously. And it's like that moment that I have memories of. There's not a lot of those. That was really good. So I would love to hear from you. Have you read any of these? Are you adding any of these to your TBR? Are you afraid of nonfiction? Or not afraid, but like hesitant about nonfiction like I am? There are so many nonfiction that I do want to read, but it is not usually something that I reach for. I think it's very appropriate that I landed on 21 nonfiction books in 2021 and made this video really nice and catchy. But yeah, let's chat about nonfiction, any of the books I mentioned, or any of your thoughts about it down in the comments below. You know I love talking with you down there. And that's going to be it for today. Stay tuned for some more favorites coming up from me very soon. I'll talk to you later. Bye.